Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Elleh N'Guetta and I'm currently pursuing my bachelor's degree in business psychology at TEDxHSLU in Lucerne, Switzerland. During my studies, I came across a lot of different theories who want to explain how we as humans work, how our brain and our minds work. And there were certain things that were always reoccurring, certain basic needs we as humans just have. And one of them is that we want to perceive ourselves positively. And that aligns with being a good person. But if we have a need for us to be good, to pursue goodness, how can so many bad things actually happen in this world? Well, I came to the conclusion that this need for being good is actually kind of breeding bad behavior. And that leads to the topic of my TED Talk today, my TEDx Talk today, why we need to be good and why this makes us bad. Let's start out with a personal example. Be a good kid. I heard it a lot when I was little, and I'm sure a lot of you heard it too. And I kind of instinctively knew what was meant by that. Do the good thing, do the right thing, even if it's sometimes hard. And staying absent from bad behavior, like lying, cheating, or hurting others. But as we grow older, we start to realize that goodness isn't as easily defined as that. It's a lot more complex. Context comes into play, and also perspective. And now, we have kind of nothing. We don't really know what goodness is, because it isn't the same for me as it may is for you, or someone in a different country or in a different time period. So, as I grew older, I tried to simplify it by making it a lot more complicated. And I constructed elaborate scenarios in which I had to decide what is now the right decision, what is now goodness. And now I realize it's something we as humans often do. If something is complex and hard to grasp, it's difficult in itself. We simplify it by making it more complicated to the point where it gets senseless. We write whole essays and books with thousands of pages about what is a good person, what is goodness. And then it isn't suitable for everyday life anymore, because naturally, lying is a bad thing, right? We all shouldn't lie, but then sometimes you should tell a white lie to protect someone's feelings, because it would be cruel to just tell them you look horrible with your new haircut. But there's also the thing, we need to evaluate the context and the perspective. Because if I would be cheating on my husband, and I'm telling myself, well, I'm a good person, so I'm not telling him that because that would hurt his feelings, that would be a really bad thing to do, right? So we see goodness isn't as easily adjustable. And then we have to revert back to the thing we had before and just making it more complete. Goodness is now something, doing the right thing, even if it's sometimes hard, staying absent from bad behavior, and accepting that it's really context-driven and perspective-heavy. But why do we even care? There are 3 core reasons for goodness we as humans have, all of us. First of all, there's empathy. Most of us are able to look at a certain person and feeling what they are feeling. We're able to do that because of mirror neurons we have all in our brain. And they get active if we do something, if we observe something, or if we even just hear about it. That's why you feel cringe if a good friend of you is telling you an embarrassing story that happened to them. You feel it with them. And it's also why we like to be good, because good things make us happy, all of us. And being the reason why someone's happy, well, that's amazing, isn't it? And secondly, we as humans could thrive throughout evolution and now staying at the top of the food chain because we work well in groups, in teams. And if I ask you, who would you like to be in a team with, in a team that's able to survive? Good people. Good because good people, they are sharing, they are caring, and they are fair. And also, if you yourself are a good person, you are a great accessory to each group, to each society. And if you're not, you may even get punished for that, get ostracized or put in prison. therefore, we need to be good to be able to live in societies. And last but not least, there's the psychological aspect of cognitive dissonance and self-worth. In the beginning, I mentioned that we need to have a positive outlook on ourselves, us as a person. That's related to self-worth. You need to feel worthy so you can keep on living. And cognitive dissonance is a phenomenon that occurs when our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions don't align. It creates a feeling of distress and disorder, and that is really troubling for us. And therefore, if that occurs, our self-worth in itself is threatened, and so we need to change something. And we can change each of these key elements I just mentioned, our thoughts, our emotions, or our actions. Changing one's actions sounds as the reasonable response if you realize something you're believing about yourself, how you're feeling about yourself, isn't right. For example, I believe I am a good person. I feel like I'm a good person. I'm content in that. But now, I do certain things who aren't as good. Littering, for example. Not really because I like to do it, but sometimes it happens. I drop something I didn't notice. Now, if I get called out on that, and someone tells me, hey, you just left that there, that's not good, it's a bad behavior, well, I could turn around and put it in the bin. But what we often do is we change our thoughts. We now think, yeah, but I have different things to do, I need to go get on a train. Or I'm not that bad of a person because everyone does bad things. The world's grey, nothing matters, right? But that's not what a good person would do, is it? Well, this thinking process leads to a lot of horrible things we do. Let's look at history, because history will prove my point, and we can put the pieces together. One thing we as humans always do, as long as we have been around, is owning slaves in one way or another. And that isn't nice, right? I mean, if I would ask you, would you like to be a slave? I think everyone would say, of course not. But when we feel empathy and we feel with them, and on the same other hand, we like to being in groups, they are part of our group, so I don't want to hurt them. And last but not least, you want your actions to align with your thoughts and your feelings, and you feel like a good person, you shouldn't own slaves. The Romans had a way to get around it. They created a system, rules for it. Not everyone was a slave, right? Romans were free. Slaves were the ones who they conquered. They came in a different land and told the people who were inhabiting that land, we're going to take the land, we're going to take everything you own, and you can start at the bottom of our hierarchy. And if you don't like that, it's war. And if you lose this war, you're a slave. This system helped them to get out of everything, because now you don't have to feel bad for your slaves. They had a choice. And are slaves really people? If you look at the slave trade of the Americas, you will see that we are willing to go to elaborate lengths just to ensure that we don't have to feel empathetic about people we hurt. We demonize them, we dehumanize them. For example, for a long time, slave owners believed that slaves, black slaves, didn't feel the same pain as a white man would. They don't have as deep as connections, and they're not as clever as intelligent. Well, it isn't true, but that allows them to not have to feel bad, not have to feel with them, because in itself now they aren't human no more. On the other hand, collective plays into that too. Of course we want to be good people, but part of which group, right? And it's also a thing with us, if we hear something often enough, it's a song, if it's a name, if it's a theory, we are more willing to believe it. Because now it's familiar, and it needs to be true. And everyone is saying it, and I want to be part of that group, so I have to believe in it too. And last but not least, the psychological aspect of cognitive dissonance. Now you are able with that system to change your thinking, and you change the feeling you have for the people you have enslaved. Now it's fine, and you can uphold your own self-worth. And you see, the root of all that is the need to be good. And that's why this makes us bad. The need for goodness leads us to a pursuit so we can legitimize our bad actions, which for we create long-lasting systems which will inflict a lot of harm onto other peoples and also further destructive behavior. But why I'm telling you all of that? You see, there's a psychological theory that there is actually no such thing as a free will. And I know it's controversial, but this theory says that everything you did, everything you do, and you will ever do is pre-engraved into your mind. It's the kind of code you have in your brain. And therefore, you and yourself aren't the one who is actually choosing the things you're doing. But why is the brain doing that? What's its end goal? The brain needs to keep you alive, self-preservation, so that you survive. That is also why we create such systems, so we can escape our own accountability. But if the brain runs against the wall, if there's a point where you see the system is no longer working, it will adapt. And therefore, knowledge is the only way we can actually change how we act and how we feel about certain things. Taking accountability for your own actions, you need to know which actions are you taking that you should accountability for, and also which you should change. And that's why we need to know why goodness can be a breeding ground for bad actions, so that we can become better, that one day we may be good people, truly good, and not just perceived as such. Because in our nowadays, it actually isn't enough, because things are often quite bad, and we just like to look away. But with knowledge, we can become better, and one day may truly be good. Thank you.